Lords, ladies and gentlemen, pray silence for the Right Honourable the Viscount Bennet, your chairman.
Your Excellencies, my lords, ladies and gentlemen, this is the 132nd of the world-famous Foyles Luncheons. We have had many important luncheons in days gone by, but none more important in its subject matter than this Anglo-American cooperation. The importance of that, I think, is known to all. And a Canadian-born, I, of course, realize how important it is. For over a century we have lived side by side and maintained peaceful relations without having armaments of any kind, which we regard as a high tribute to both of us. Be one not unknown to you, to all of you. Major Witney is deputizing today for His Excellency the American ambassador, who had intended to be present, but who found it impossible to be here by reason of his detention on the way to America from Lisbon. But his place is being taken, as I have said, by Major Witney. Major Witney is a very distinguished American, now associated with the work of the American embassy in this country.
My lords, ladies and gentlemen, a luncheon meeting at which we are deliberately met to discuss the subject of Anglo-American relations has some of the savor of a forbidden treat. There is no phenomenon of this present and post-war world, as we hope it will be and know it will be, upon which we found more anticipations of happiness and satisfaction. And yet we must all have a vague sense that there is something dangerous and exciting about this subject, that it must be handled with extreme delicacy and even shyness. That is realized by the government and most of the people. But in this country, that need is felt by the government and the people. There can never be a day when this country can feel absolutely sure that a party may not rise again in the United States that may temporarily consider that the country's interests do not involve so close a participation in the affairs of the continent as has become a necessity to this country. Therefore, the healthy road, and in my submission the only possible road, on which the two must travel side by side, is the road of honorable self-respect among equals, where each will give heed and respect to the dignity and independence of the other, but will hold no less firmly to its own. On that condition, I think that we may confidently anticipate that those fundamental unities which the two have in common will always provide their beneficent influence to heal differences and avert strife. Now, we often hear it said, let us lift our heads and see whom we have grouped about us in the world. We have on one side that stalwart and newly conscious nation of Chinese, whose 5th and 6th armies are marching today under the command of an American general to join the British forces under General Alexander in Burma.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard the eldest son speak, you have heard the old man speak, and now you are to have for just a very few moments the youngest son speak. The reason, of course, he can only speak for a few moments is because everyone is terrified what he might say. And in his exuberant youth, the youngest son is always very ready to proffer advice where it is asked for or where it is not. The eldest son and the father have discoursed very eloquently about the ideals behind Anglo-American cooperation, and with those we would agree 100%. But as a growing boy, and especially a hungry growing boy, we are always thinking of something that we can eat and use. And for 2 or 3 moments I am going to speak about the practical methods of Anglo-American cooperation that we have achieved or that we are achieving. And one reason that I do so is that we situated in Australia right out on the outposts of Western civilization. We are the farthest flung frontier of the whole world in that regard. We appreciated very much indeed the efforts that were being made during this last 2 years to bring about the maximum amount of Anglo-American cooperation to put those weapons into our hands that would enable us to defend our country and that outpost. And especially during that period when our own men, our flyers, were flying over the Atlantic and over Europe here to help your men in Britain, our soldiers fighting in the Mediterranean, in Libya and in Greece, and our sailors in the Atlantic and the Mediterranean to try and keep your food supplies and your munitions and your raw materials going. We were very anxious indeed to see that these supplies came into our hands at the earliest possible moment so that we, on our own shores, would be able to defend ourselves. Not merely naval control, but that we should have ample merchant ships to carry our supplies to wherever they are needed, so that our offensives will be able to be dictated by military considerations and not by the paucity of our supplies. And it seems to me that the time has come for us to think again in the old terms in which we used to think before the last century, when land transport had acquired so many conveniences, that after all it is the oceans of the world, the seas of the world that really unite the nations. They have been the great highways of commerce since the very beginning of things. Land has rather been an obstacle to free interchange of products. The seas and the great waterways of the world have been those things that unite. And you've only to look around today to see it is because we can control the Arctic, that we're able to get munitions into Russia to help them in their gallant fight, and very successful fight, thank God, against the Hun, to realize that it is because the Indian Ocean is still under our control we're able to reinforce our people in the Middle East and our forces in the Far East. And the Atlantic, despite all the efforts of the Hun to secure control of those waters, is still able to have sent across to it day after day and night after night by our gallant sailors facing these horrible, unseen, concealed dangers, the munitions, the raw materials, the food necessary for us to keep the flag flying in this country. Where she is sent out as well. The most gallant general that this war has produced in MacArthur, who's gone out to the Southwest Pacific to take supreme command of all the forces there to begin that grand offensive which will gradually get back for us those overrun countries and put in our hands again the resources that we need for our victory and to deny them to the enemy. And last of all, as the most appropriate, possibly, sign of the Anglo-American cooperation is this appointment only yesterday of Mr. Casey, a distinguished Australian statesman with long British experience, who has been exceedingly well received in America and knows the American mind now from his long intimate association there, that he should be appointed as your Minister of State for the Middle East to bring about, in actual fact and in the War Cabinet, an Anglo-Australian American cooperation.
If we do that, and if that is